Fireside Chat.
My name is Elliot Seiler. I work under the mononym Silerius as an activist. For 6 years now, I've been involved in various efforts, from Prop 19, the recreational cannabis legalization effort in California, to political prisoner support, and most importantly, operational security as part of my interest in the InfoSec and InfoFreedom movements. Before then, I was aware of social issues due to having been a teenager when Hurricane Katrina hit my hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana. I also happen to be uncomfortably familiar with some of the inner politics of one of the nation's most corrupt cities, having been raised in a certain privileged class of society. My family wanted nothing more than for me to become something like a white-hat InfoSec specialist working for the government. I applied to a few schools of note, including Stevens Institute of Technology, and not gotten in. When I did matriculate to Loyola, they had all but eliminated my major of choice. Needless to say, I am nothing by formal training, but by practice I am a technician, technical educator, and open source code contributor. The work that I am most proud of is my code. I'm a moderately advanced coder who's fluent in Clojure, Python, HTML, SQL, Bash, and Ruby, and familiar with Java, JavaScript, C, assembly, and various other forms of Lisp. Additionally, I have some media experience and can produce copy, edit and format, as well as take and edit photos. I come to you a millennial jack of all trades, master of none. And this is my first independent effort to organize. I am learning through this process, and I hope that you don't mind bearing with me. And occasionally correcting me in the rare occurrence that I'm wrong, because I value being less wrong. What I have for you today is not a report, but an announcement of my example-backed understandings of the current state of threat to free-minded individuals, as well as what I plan to do about it. Nothing that I cover in this video is exhaustive, but the information is up to date as of October 2016 and carefully weighed. I may not have the dramatic flair or swiftness of some of our contemporary revolutionaries, but I have understandings that I'd like to share, and a willingness to munchkin the rules of this war. That's not to say that I think the rules are to be preserved or upheld, but that they are currently in place and have real ramifications, some of which can be devastating and should be avoided at all costs. During my 20s, I have studied select situations wherein much was lost for well-intended people. It is my understanding that the goal of war is not strife, but change, and I shall be embarking on an attempt to produce and organize an effort that should shift our focus and our odds. Thank you for listening thus far, and now I shall proceed with an overview of my reasons, my project, and how you may contribute. For any among my opposition viewing this, I'd like to point out that I have taken careful consideration of the law, and to my knowledge, I am doing this in the most American way possible. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers. To start off, our world is broken. You've got corporate and governmental corruption. For example, global trade agreements. These typically come with increased intellectual property restrictions, such as copyrights, restricting derivative works, or attempting to profit off piracy through the ability to litigate about it. Or patents, which reward established businesses and limit innovations, which has the benefit for the purposes of the status quo that these limited innovations don't have any sudden societal impacts. Another impact of globalization trade agreements is that they often come with what's called a trade court or trade arbitration. And this tends to be sovereignty violating because corporations can sue governments for unfair trade restrictions. And the result is a race to the least common denominator of societal, labor, and environmental protections. Another corporate and governmental corruption is profit-driven wars. You've got resource grabs, like how the Iraq War had the useful side effect of liberating access to Iraqi oil. Or It may benefit rebuilding contractors, such as Halliburton or Bechtel, because they profit off of the contracting dollars that can be earned through the complex rebuilding effort. They need to put out prefab housing and distribute food and supplies and so on. And so these contractors make a lot of money off the rebuilding. And then you have the defense contractors, or as they're often called when we're not lauding them and protecting them with the government, arms dealers. Folks like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon. These folks produce weapons of war and make an awful lot of money doing so. So war is good business for them. And then you've got the good old-fashioned private armies, folks like Blackwater and Vinnell Corporation. These folks are just paid to fight. And so yes, they're going to profit off your wars. And so, for these four reasons, wars are increasingly profit-driven. And then you just have the simple fact that a lot of Western powers are supporting corrupt regimes. As a couple examples, Saudi Arabia, who we support both for their liberal distribution of their oil and their tendency to distribute it in ways that we prefer in the U.S. and to distribute it in U.S. dollars. As a matter of fact, they actually just switched to paying their people in accordance with the Western calendar, rather than the long-standing lunar Islamic calendar that they've been using since the kingdom was founded in 1932. Another benefit of Saudi Arabia to the Western powers is that they serve as a point of allied influence on other Middle Eastern nations. Now, this is ignoring the fact that they have massive human rights violations. Atheists, homosexuals, blasphemers get stoned and massively, disproportionately punished in Saudi Arabia. But nonetheless, the U.S. doesn't kick Saudi Arabia over. That's for corrupt regimes that have pissed us off on a resource basis or an influence basis. Another example would be the United Arab Emirates. In addition to their oil supply, which is one of the largest in the region, I think that they are the second largest in comparison to Saudi Arabia, they are also a massive trade partner, being that they are a very liberal trade area and very, very popular for doing business. Now, this ignores the fact that there are about 7 absolute monarchies. The United Emirates are 7 united monarchies that all sit on a federal council governing the entire collection of the Emirates. So there's absolutely some human rights problems there as well. And so that's some of the governmental flaws that we've got. But then you've got mass incarceration. For example, the drug war. The drug war is a big, big pile of idiocy. It was spawned in reefer madness. Back in the turn of the century, there was widespread mid to light duty drug use. Even children were using some drugs. They were being dosed with narcotics to put them to sleep easier or calm them down when they were fussy. This got tempered a little bit by the temperance movement. But it wasn't until rising ethnic immigration and free African Americans started using as well, and people got these popular associations. They associated Asians with opium, they associated Hispanics with pot, and the blacks with coke and pot. And these associations may or may not have been accurate, but they were very, very popular. And the backlash against these associations accelerated the fear-mongering and really stepped up the ability of the temperance movement to take hold. Then you also had paper companies capitalizing on that to take advantage of this backlash. But for them, it was really about industrial hemp being a threat to their paper process. Now, the drug war was heightened in the Reagan years for political purposes. Political enemies of the Reagan administration were associated with drugs very easily, and what happened is they pushed the association of African American communities with crack and with pot, and then while linking that in the public consciousness, they focused on just say no to drugs and a massive push for the war on drugs. And as a result, this disproportionately impacts minorities. To say nothing of the fact that it's highly ineffective, highly expensive, and it's commonly used to justify our very militarized police forces in this country. To say nothing of the fact that some drugs have a decent argument for being victimless crimes. Pot, for example. Now, going on from there, you also have the fact that there's a discriminatory policing trend in this country. In America, you have a lot of discriminatory policing. We've had some recent scandals about this in places such as Michigan and Illinois. And there's varying motivations for this sort of thing. Sometimes there's political motivations. For example, if you restrict constituencies that oppose you, this will have advantages of them not voting as much, or them being less able to get around, or this, that, and the other. Or you can also use this as a way of looking strong on law and order. If your platform is that you're a law and order politician, then cracking down on trivial crimes with some discriminatory policing efforts can really boost your numbers. And also there's monetary and convenience-based reasons why you'll get discriminatory policing. Profiling is just easy. It's a quick and easy and lazy way to boost your numbers for meeting your quotas. On top of that, oppressed minorities are easier to come up with excuses to charge with things. And so discriminatory policing is a real problem. And then you've also got mass surveillance. You've got surveillance by governments. For example, the warrantless wiretapping program. We first really started hearing about this in the Bush era, although there were steps toward this, actually, as far back that we know of as the Clinton era, because Bill Clinton was the administration under which the Clipper chip program was pushed. The Clipper chip was a proposal wherein encrypted phone technology would have a specialized chip put in it that would allow for easy government wiretapping. And this was a massive, massive controversy between the tech community and the government. And it just fell apart. And part of the reason it fell apart is because golden keys and magic backdoors don't work. Now, the warrantless wiretapping program that was supposedly stopped after the Bush era, we've seen elements of that come up again and again since then. We've seen elements of it in the Obama administration. Edward Snowden revealed elements of things like this, and it just keeps coming back up. So when I say supposedly stopped, I mean they're just fucking lying to us. Now, you've also got another thing revealed in the Snowden releases that we've suspected for a long time, but we finally got confirmation of, is that there's capture and analysis of all public internet content. They are actually, I think they're actually getting close to completion if they haven't completed it already, but they are building a massive, I believe, exabyte data center in Utah for the NSA for the purposes of storing and capturing and then later analyzing as needed all of this data that crosses the internet. And then you've got the fact that the NSA stockpiles software and hardware vulnerabilities. These are vulnerabilities that have not been publicized, have not been released, and technically there's a legal obligation for the government to release vulnerabilities that they have discovered to the companies that make the product so that these vulnerabilities can be patched. Unfortunately, the NSA does not do this. They sit on them for the purpose of later breaking into these same products. The NSA also attempts to breach privacy and security software. Tor, for example, they are regularly trying to attack. They're also trying to attack popular encryption protocols. the Open PGP standard, popularly implemented with the new Privacy Guard, OTR, which is used to achieve off-the-record encryption over Jabber or XMPP chat protocols. They're always trying to breach these. It is an ongoing arms race. And then you've got just the wonderful, wonderful fact that it's been coming out recently that law enforcement officers very, very often have a real problem of abusing access to their to the databases, these private government databases that are supposed to only be used when there is a warrant for an active investigation. But these law enforcement officers are abusing these to stalk lost loves, old flames, ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, so on and such forth. And they're doing these personal abuses of these secure, restricted government databases. So this is just one more demonstration that we can't really trust the government with all of this access that they demand. Then you've got your private spies. You've got people like Stratfor, who spy on protesters on behalf of corporations. For example, Stratfor spied on the Bhopal protesters on behalf of Dow Chemical. You've also got them sharing intel about governments and military movements with just American or foreign corporations for business strategy purposes. And all of this is backed up by marketing. For the purpose of selling us things, there is a massive ongoing data mining effort across the industrialized world. Your web habits, your purchasing patterns, your reading and entertainment preferences, all of this is being tracked and logged and analyzed to fuel more effective targeted advertising to drive sales. Of course, the government and the private spies will gladly, happily use this data too, since corporations are collecting it into neat little piles for them. Now, these are some serious problems, but propaganda aggravates this condition. You have lies, for example, skipped fact-checking, because in the rush to publish and the zeal for ratings, falsehoods will slip through on supposedly accurate news broadcasts. And then you have some biased news outlets. Some news outlets deliberately ignore inconvenient facts to promote their desired message or agenda. And you also have corporate concealment, because the profit motive, when not balanced by an ethical imperative, can drive lots of cover-ups and buy supposed statistics through carefully planned out and paid for studies. Then you have your misleading portrayals and interpretations, because truths can be told in an order that inspires a false conclusion. Or you can ask leading questions, and through these speculations and carefully phrased questions, you can lead an interviewee or an audience member to assume facts, not in evidence. And finally, you have distraction. You have trivial news items, scary and irrelevant reporting, which can distract from actionable issues. You have narcotization, seemingly activist news and entertainment that can sap motivation. And this comes in a variety of forms. You've got curiosity stoppers, info that is phrased like an answer to a relevant activist question, but doesn't actually have any actionable data in it. Or you have the dynamic of resolution versus resolve. You can have stories which can be portrayed such that they seem to be concluded, seem to be resolved, and they can seem to be well in hand or being dealt with appropriately by the authorities, such that the readers and the viewers will feel satisfied rather than driven, rather than filled with resolve to achieve an actual solution to the problem. And then you can have satisfying entertainment. Activist-oriented entertainment can excite people for a cause, but it can also, if viewers aren't careful, sate the need for action, especially if the content isn't current, accurate, or virtuously handled. Some examples would be the show Mr. Robot with Fun Society. The emblems of Fun Society and talk of Fun Society are seeping in around the edges of Anonymous. But Fun Society isn't a real thing. It is a fictional organization with fictional membership and fictional goals. It may resemble the actual decentralized collective of Anonymous, but there is no actual Fun Society operations or anything of the sort. And so this can also be true of any show about an underground resistance or a revolution. People can be fulfilled by this underground feeling, this feeling of participation, because the human mind is not very good at differentiating between what you have witnessed and what you've actually participated in. In addition to narcotization, you have consumerism. Attention can be diverted to shopaholism instead of action. If you want to learn more about this, look into the Bernays system and how through the studies of Bernays, many corporations have Bernays, which was based on the studies of Freud. Many corporations and private entities are manipulating and psychologically analyzing all of the public for the purposes of driving sales and controlling our behaviors. Some examples of consumerism being a problem would be Guy Fawkes masks, which, although they've become a very popular symbol for Anonymous, have the amusing problem of every Guy Fawkes mask that is purchased and isn't a counterfeit is giving a little bit of money to Warner Brothers. Another example would be anytime you see X% of this purchase, 5% of this purchase goes to support African children, 3% of this purchase goes to support breast cancer, and you have no guarantee that the organization that this charitable donation is going to is actually legitimate or very effective in their apparent altruism. Furthermore, this warm, fuzzy feeling you get with it saps your motivation. You only have so much care you can put out in a given span of time, and if you feel warm and fuzzy about donating to an ineffective charity group, then you're not going to be as driven to do other activist actions that you could be taking. And then there's much hullabaloo about lost rights. Now yes, some of our rights are under fire. For example, the right to link has been under fire. It was previously attacked with Obama administration attempts to pass a law criminalizing access of previously stolen authentication features. These would be things like credit card numbers, social security numbers, usernames and passwords, that sort of thing. They tried to criminalize this. They didn't succeed, however. It was also previously attacked with the since-dropped fraud charges against Barrett Brown. But there are no current attacks on the right to link. They may try again. We should be vigilant about that, but there are no current attacks on it, and we haven't lost it. Your right to privacy is also under attack. For example, law enforcement is very often demanding a magic backdoor. They're demanding that the tech community just pull out of our asses the ability to give law enforcement special access to encrypted data without weakening the encryption protocol altogether against all adversaries. And there's also an increasing prevalence of cameras in public places. And you also just have the simple fact that the intelligence agencies have the ability to remotely activate cameras and microphones on many devices, such as cell phones, computers, and so on, if you do not take very careful precautions to prevent this. I believe Edward Snowden is actually partnering with another hacker to develop a hardware device to place on your smartphone to prevent this sort of thing. Now, despite these limited attacks on some of our rights, there's much more fear-mongering going on about rights that we have not actually lost. This fear-mongering can come from the government, because if they get you scared that you've already lost the right, you're less likely to use it for fear of being incarcerated yourself, and they succeed in keeping you from exercising your rights. This can happen from the news media, because sensationalism about supposedly lost rights drives viewership and readership. And this can even come from other activists, because fear enhances their supposed importance. Despite all the fear-mongering that goes on, we do currently retain the right to link to hacked or leaked information. We do currently retain the right to link to and analyze and access already publicized authentication features. The only person who is currently criminally liable for that is the person who stole it in the first place. And we retain the right to discuss and analyze leaked and hacked information for our own benefit and for public benefit. We, however, do not have the right to break into private servers for investigative purposes. This is unfortunate, but hackers are thus making a personal choice that can, and likely will in the event that they get caught, lead to imprisonment. Even if the hacked information turns out to be vitally important and reveal massive malfeasance, it is illegal to access it in the first place. It is also illegal to release government classified information if you have a security clearance for such, even when doing so reveals corruption or malfeasance. Snowden ran afoul of this. And it's illegal even if you try to go through channels and that fails, as Snowden did. Now, calling this espionage, as they have done about Snowden, or calling it treason, wherein espionage and treason are typically defined as oriented around an enemy. Espionage being acquiring one group's secrets on behalf of their enemies. This demonstrates an attitude that the public is the enemy. Now, you should stop and think about that attitude for a second. Government officials call Edward Snowden a traitor, an espionage actor, and they call him guilty of treason. But he revealed the information not in secret to some foreign power, not as a bargaining chip, but directly to the public after his attempts to talk to his supervisors about it fell through. And they lied on public. The head of the NSA lied to Congress about the issues that he had factual information contradicting him. And so when this happened, Edward Snowden revealed the information to the public. To call him treasonous for this is to declare the public the enemy. Now, of course, politicians will still get away with sloppy handling of classified info sometimes. Apparently, this sort of law is only for the little people. So, if you're a corrupt politician and you have an insecure email server, you'll probably still get away with it. Good luck. Good for you. Now, there are some things that can be done about this. And what I'm doing about this is I am establishing a new organization, a new open, decentralized organization that I call the Public Inquisition, or PI for short. The Public Inquisition has a few key goals. To preserve, because lost information changes nothing. So we will be backing up and archiving all existing hacks and leaks to prevent their loss. Because if any hack or leak is stored in a centralized location, Oh, wouldn't it be just awful if, by mistake, something were to happen to that data center? And we will be providing secure, decentralized, anonymous upload for whistleblowers and hackers. Furthermore, the second goal is to investigate, because mystery lies in our understanding, not reality. And so, those contributing to the Public Inquisition will gather public information for analysis, identify gaps in our understanding, validate or invalidate sources based on the available data, collect potential propaganda to be analyzed and, if it's found to be propaganda, refuted, and identify potentially contagious liability in the information we have access to, in order to protect analysts who don't wish to be exposed to this potentially contagious liability. Some examples of items that could become contagiously could contain contagious liability would be stolen authentication features should the federal government ever succeed in criminalizing access of that. Things like username and password pairs, or credit card numbers, or social security numbers. And also classified information would be flagged for the purposes of protecting analysts who are also members of the government from being charged or having their security clearances revoked by virtue of the fact that they looked at classified information that they weren't entitled to look at. The third goal is to analyze, because raw data is only the foundation of knowledge. Analysts with Public Inquisition will summarize and organize the disparate information that we have access to into intelligence. We will identify trends and patterns of behavior, and we will discover the implications of the intelligence data that we gather and produce. And we will work to identify geographical and societal hotspots of events, power, or potential change. And the fourth and final goal of any inquisitor of the Public Inquisition is to advise, because knowledge without action is toothless. And so, the Public Inquisition will work to identify efficient actions to effect change. We will work to inform the public of lies and liars, and we will work to publicize actions that can improve society or eliminate corruption. Now, the membership of the Public Inquisition will be open to all. Anyone can contribute to the Public Inquisition. Those who demonstrate skill, dedication, and honesty will be recognized for such. Now, just because you want to contribute to the Public Inquisition does not mean you need to contribute in what may seem to be the stereotypically appropriate way. You should play to your strengths, because we have a wide variety of roles available. To name a few, you could be an archivist, an analyst, an investigator, a graphic artist, a copywriter, a barker or cheerleader, a content producer for video and audio. We have a number of things that you can do, and we need all of these sorts of activities to drive this organization. And there is nothing to gain for yourself or for the Inquisition as a whole from forcing yourself into a role whose challenge you can't meet. Play to your strengths. Now, we will also be participating in collaborative integrity checking. Yes, there will be mistakes and attempts at sabotage too. There will be feds, there will be trolls, there will be idiots who just make a mistake once in a while. I'll make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. We're human. But we will all recheck each other's work. We will be looking for mistakes, unfounded conclusions, mistaken assumptions, and possible sabotage, because that will crop up once in a while. But to paraphrase Linus Torvalds, the creator of the Linux kernel, with enough eyeballs, all bugs and all possible attempts at sabotage are shallow. Come at me, feds. Now, here's what you can do now to help the Public Inquisition. First of all, you can archive. There are a number of existing hacks and leaks, and it would be a crying shame if any of that information were lost or damaged due to, excuse me, it would be a shame if any of that were lost or damaged due to being insufficiently backed up. So all existing leaks and hacks, for example, all Snowden documents released to date and any that get released in the future, the drone documents, Cablegate, Stratfor, H.B. Gary, the Panama Papers, Hillary Clinton's released emails, anything else you think of, archive it all. The more of you archive it, the better, because, frankly, I don't want to lose a drop of this. Who knows what little piece, what little seemingly insignificant piece might turn out to have the crucial linking bit of information to connect some politician with some corrupt action. You can also focus on centralized data sets. Any data set that is only in one or a few places. Also, any data sets that we might have forgotten about. And of course, any new data sets as they're released. Now, the next thing you can do to help Public Inquisition right now is you can start investigating. You can gather public information about shady groups, government agencies, corporations, political groups. Maybe you want to investigate the KKK. Maybe you want to take a leaf out of the book of Op Death Eaters and investigate child predators. Or maybe you want to investigate, the NSA and what vulnerabilities they seem to have access to. You can also be following political and military news, troop movements, saber rattling by various governments, shifts in the balance of power or potential shifts. And I know some of you like doxing. You can dox politicians using public information. Public information is legal to look at. They can't actually throw a fit about legally looking at publicly available information and collating it for the purposes of understanding what our public officials are doing. And then the third thing you can do, starting immediately to help the Public Inquisition, is you can help build tools to drive forward the future of activism and public intelligence. Because we're going to need new tools to do this properly. We're going to need decentralized data storage, assistance for our analysis, a better representation of what we know. And towards that end, I am building a toolkit. I am developing a toolkit that I call the Public Inquisition Virtual Intelligence Toolkit Encrypted, or the PI-VITE for short. It is a multi-part, decentralized, encrypted toolkit. It is open to all groups, not just the Inquisition. Any group can use the platform of the PI-VITE, because it is a toolkit for vigilante intelligence for the general public. Now, the core tools of the PI-VITE are first and foremost evidence storage. The evidence storage grid will be a decentralized storage system based atop the Tahoe LAFS file system, the least authority file store, to store data sets like the Snowden documents, like the Panama Papers, in a redundant, decentralized fashion that is very, very censorship resistant. When thousands of computers are sharing in the storage of a given data set, it becomes a little bit tedious to figure out which ones you need to get rid of to try and kill it. Now, additional features of the evidence storage system will include optical character recognition to convert it all into a uniform text storage format for improved searchability and referenceability. And there will also be pattern matching to help identify potentially contagious liability, such as authentication features and classified information. And the purpose of this is so that when you upload potentially contagious liability, you can flag it to be redacted. That way, individuals who do not wish to be exposed to such don't have to be. And lastly, there will be an easy reference system to allow easy referencing from outside of the evidence storage system into it, such that you can easily support citations in published articles or in the knowledge base that we develop. And that brings me to the second core tool of the Public Inquisition Vigilante Intelligence Toolkit, the knowledge graph. The knowledge graph is a graph-based representation of all collected knowledge of the Inquisition. Graph databases, and this is not the graphs that you may be familiar with from high school, of little scatter plots or curves on a coordinate plane. No, this is a network graph. Nodes and edges connecting the nodes. And this is much closer to how human knowledge is actually represented in our brains. Much, much closer than a wiki. And so we will be using a graph database to store all collected knowledge of the Public Inquisition. And this graph database will have a couple special features to assist in analysis. On top of just preventing duplication of labor and having better sanity checking so that you can verify your implications and easily map out all the connections between the various things you think you know and the things you actually know, there will be an implied predicate system to match potential implications of knowledge to available data. So that if, say you have a collection of knowledge that implies that if you were to find a politician who was controlling a public charitable foundation and also vehemently against some public issue or another, that pattern happened to link up to another thing. And so maybe you have a predicate wherein it's implied that whoever is behind the actions of this charitable organization is also associated with this corruption. The system can automatically suggest these inferences for you. And so through these computationally assisted inferences, both the ability to lay them out yourself, and then as the knowledge graph gets more filled out, the system will start spotting more of them on its own and suggesting them to users. This will allow us to grow our knowledge faster and more efficiently. These are the core tools of the Public Inquisition Vigilante Intelligence Toolkit Encrypted. These tools will be released. These tools will be released by the end of fall. Now, there will be future expansion to this toolkit. I intend to eventually release a tool for coordinating and organizing all of the various ways of censorship-resistant publication, and organizing them in such a fashion that the general public can more easily access censorship-resistant information, because the current state of affairs is very opaque to the general public. They have to download special tools or something like that. Now, the other key tool that we're eventually going to release that's currently on the plans is a communication management tool to allow groups using the PI Vite to manage shared social media and other comms accounts. And this will have the added benefit of allowing you to track your relationships with your audience and gather information about public opinion from the interaction data. Now, these later tools will be released across 2017 and onward, and it'll be as additional tools are developed. So, as of now, you can start participating and helping me develop these tools. Send me an email, silerius@publicinquisition.com, My encryption keys are online. You can find me on Keybase. Or contact me on Jabber, silerius@jabber.at, and talk with me about how to participate in this. Additionally, matrix.org, the open source alternative to Slack, I've established a channel on matrix.org, #Public Inquisition. There will be links to all of this in the video description. I look forward to seeing what you can contribute to the Inquisition, because nobody expects the Public Inquisition. Thank you.